Tyson Fury versus Deontay Wilder, the rematch happens on the 22nd of February 2020 at the MGM Grand, Las Vegas. If it's anything like the first fight, boxing fans were in for a treat. That first fight had me on the edge of my seat. I'll be honest, I never thought Tyson had that sort of performance in him. I thought it'd come too soon. His first two warm-up fights coming back off the huge weight gain and the depression, he didn't look particularly great in, but as usual, Tyson Fury confounds us all, and he put in a most magnificent performance. So let's go back and look at that first fight. Now for me, Ben Davison, Tyson's ex-trainer, put in a fantastic game plan for the first fight. I know we watched hours and hours of footage of Deontay Wilder, and for me, the game plan was 100% on point. Now, if you look at Wilder, what he loves to do, he loves to throw out that jab. Could be a throwaway jab, could be a stiff jab, but all he's doing is using it as a rangefinder for that big right hand. So he'll get his distance and then he'll shuffle step in and throw that big looping right hand. So rangefinder with the jab. Even if you're out of range just a little bit, what he'll do is he'll close the distance really quickly and he'll throw that big right hand. But the jab is used as a rangefinder. And if you're still in distance, when he's thrown that big right hand, he'll do the left hook. So his combination of choice is jab, right hand, left hook. If you notice what Tyson was doing, he was blocking, slipping the jab, stepping out of range, but he knows that big right hand is going to come afterwards. So he was prepared for it. So that big looping right hand came over. He rolled underneath it. If he was close enough to Deontay Wilder, he'd tie up. If he was just that little bit out of distance to tie up, he knows that once he's rolled underneath that right hand, as he's coming up, to pull back out of the left hook. And he was on point all night long. I say he was frustrating Wilder with his jab, going in there, throwing the 1-2s when he needed to. But like I said, he had prepared for Wilder's big punches. Now what happened as the fight went on, Wilder adjusted a little bit, and instead of throwing that right hand so far out and looping it round, almost like the windmill effect, he kept it much shorter and sharper. So the trajectory was much shorter and sharper. So it wasn't swinging out so much. And I believe this is what caught Tyson out. It's because Wilder made that little adjustment with his shots. They weren't so looping. They weren't so winging in. And this is what caught Tyson out. But I do believe if Tyson had been 100% on his game and 100% match fit, I think he took the fight a little bit too early for me, but put in a fantastic performance. But I think if he'd have had another one or two fights underneath his belt, I think that game plan would have worked right the way through the fight. And I think Tyson would have comfortably cruised to a points victory. Now, one thing that Tyson didn't do, he did for very brief moments, and then he went back to fighting orthodox. He fought southpaw. Very, you could see he wanted to go into southpaw stance, but as soon as he got into southpaw stance, it's almost like he was fighting, keeping to the orders that he'd been given by Davison, and he went back to fighting orthodox. But there was a couple of moments he just flickered into southpaw and then went back into orthodox. Now I do believe that if he fought some of this rematch in southpaw, I do believe this would flummox Wilder even more. Because if you go and look at Ortiz versus Wilder, the second fight, I mean, Ortiz is outboxing him from the southpaw stance, and it's very difficult for Wilder to attain lead foot dominance. That means get his lead foot outside of Ortiz's and create any angles, and Ortiz is outboxing him comprehensively until, of course, that big shot lands. But I do think if Tyson mixes up the southpaw with the orthodox stance, I think it's going to give Wilder a hell of a lot of problems, because Wilder, as we know, is going to spend the whole fight just looking for those big shots, looking to get into range to land those big shots. And I said, if Fury can mix up stances, orthodox southpaw, the herky-jerky style, all those feints he does, it could be a long night for Deontay Wilder. Now, just a quick note about Deontay Wilder. A lot of people say, he's technically terrible and this, that and the other. He's got terrible footwork and he's wings in those punches and he looks like a windmill, etc., etc. Now, I think that people like Mark Breland have tried to work on his style to make him more technically adept. But my belief is when they've done this, it's been to the detriment of his power. And I think they've looked at this and thought, that's the one thing that changes the fight for him. That's the one thing. He can be outboxed all night long and then wham, he just lands those big punches. So I think they've abandoned the idea of trying to make him more technically adept. They've just tweaked things here and there. And don't get me wrong, he's a lot better boxer than he was 5 years ago. But I think if they've tried to alter his footwork and his balance and stuff, I think that it's been to the detriment of his power. And I think they've just thought, no, just let him go back. It looks unorthodox, it looks ungainly, but it works. And if it works, don't fix it. So, in summing up, I think this fight will follow pretty much the pattern of the first fight. I think Fury will be feinting, all that herky-jerky stuff, will land his shots, get in and out, and I think Wilder will be waiting all night long just to land those big, big shots. Key off on Fury and get into range, look for that opportunity to land those big, big shots. And it makes for a fascinating fight. Can Fury stay out of range and outbox him? Can Wilder get into range and land those massive shots? It's going to be a great night. Thanks for listening.